morning, everyone, and welcome to the Backshed Bible Study for today, which is Friday, April 2nd, 2021. It is Friday, Good Friday, in the Easter week, and the day that we remember that moment where Jesus ultimately was turned over to to his accusers and condemned to death and would go to the cross. And it's a somber day within Christendom. It's a day where we remember the pain that he went through. We remember the unjustified trials and accusations. But it also is a day that gives us hope as we look forward to the things that would come just a few days later, right? So it's a good time to be together this morning. I hope that you were able to join us yesterday for Thursday's edition of the Backshed Bible Study. If you did not, I rarely will tell you, go back and watch this one, but go back and watch yesterday's. That we had a guest on that just gave us a great look into the Last Supper, to what it would have meant for the Jews of that day to be celebrating Passover, and what it would have meant for Christ's disciples as they celebrated that Passover meal and went out from there into the Garden of Gethsemane and so on. So that was yesterday. Definitely go back and check that out. We have it here on our Facebook page, as well as you can go to our YouTube page, youtube.com/Sunrise Community Church, and you can get all the past episodes of the Backshed. This week, we as I look back over this week, we've done some live versions, and we've done a few pre-recorded editions of this. Today, we are coming live from the shed here. We have family and friends, or I should say family, that has shown up here to celebrate Easter together. April's parents are here. My father-in-law has been warning me for months that he had a Christmas present for me that he had not given to me yet, and he showed up with that present. And as a lot of you know, I'm a big fan of DeWalt tools, and look at this. I got a new battery operated DeWalt blower. So should I turn it on? Well, I got to put the battery on it. Let's see what this thing sounds like. So you can tell I'm live, because I would probably edit this out if I had recorded this ahead of time, but I have not started this thing up yet. So we're gonna see how this goes. Ready? Look at that. Anyway, that's gonna annoy a lot of people today, a little bit later, but there you go. Merry Christmas to me. There you go. Oh, great. So that's that. I had to try that out with you. Thank you, David. Good morning. Good to see you, my friend. Sometimes it's just it's better to go unscripted. Whew, here in the shed. I also have I've installed a permanent location for the extra camera here, and so there we are. The washed out light, because it's right next to a window, and that's sitting in a lot of extra light, so you can see how messy the studio is here today, right? So this thing is a disaster. So we're going back to the other camera, so you can just have to deal with the close in. All right, it's enough of that tomfoolery, as a good friend of mine would call that. We're going to jump into the scriptures today, and here we are. We are on Friday. There's a lot that happened on that Friday of Jesus's last day here on earth in the human form. It starts with his betrayal and arrest, and that's where we're going to be focusing in today, just on a kind of a microcosm of that. It goes on to through multiple trials that he had throughout that night. And so it's important to note that when we talk about Friday, it really starts what we would see as Thursday night. It starts in the Garden of Gethsemane, somewhere after midnight, and where he gets betrayed by Judas, where he gets arrested. And then throughout the night and into the morning, he has these trials before Annas, before Caiaphas, the whole of the Sanhedrin, or the Sanhedrin, depending on how you say it, Pontius Pilate, Herod, Pilate again, that ultimately leads to, in the afternoon, his crucifixion, probably somewhere in the around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So, and then ultimately to his burial that evening. So, key scriptures today. If you're there's so much that I just put this on the screen for you. Matthew 26, Matthew chapters 26 and 27, Mark chapters 14 and 15, Luke chapters 22 and 23, and John chapters 18 through 20. So those are the key scriptures, and we're going to be bouncing back and forth between many of those today as we examine Peter in that last week. So you have all those other events. I encourage you to go back in your Bibles as you have time. Read through the whole of those. And you may have remembered earlier in the week, if you were watching, I really encouraged you to, if you ever have a chance to check out a Harmony of the Gospels, that's a parallel account of the Gospels where it has Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all lined up in a row. And it's a great way to chronologically look at the events of the Gospels all lined up together, and you can see the different accounts. Because today I want to take a look at the different accounts of the Gospel writers in regard to the story of Peter. One of the reasons I like to do that is behind the scenes that there are things you kind of learn about the gospel writers. These were not only people who were ordained by God to write out the account of Jesus while he was here, but they're also people that were human beings. And because of that, they have their angles. They have some of them are more detailed in their accounts, and some of them will occasionally treat certain characters along the way with maybe potentially a little more disdain. You never know. So for instance, John Mark spent a lot of time with Peter. And so you'll find along the way that John Mark's account of Peter tends to have quite a bit of detail, tends to call him out on some occasional things. So read in Mark's gospel sometime as you see how he treats Peter in his gospel compared to some of the other gospel writers. You'll also find today that John will fill in some gaps that Matthew, Mark, and Luke leave out. So we're going to jump in. We're going to pick up in the Garden of the Gethsemane, where Jesus has just been betrayed by Judas into the hands of the officials here. We're going to be in Matthew right now. I'm in Matthew chapter 26. And remember there in the upper room that, and again, I'm going to talk to you about the, let me pull up some notes here on the other screen. I'm going to talk to you about Peter and everything that happened with him in this night of Jesus being betrayed and so on. So remember that they're in the upper room during the Last Supper, that it was Jesus that said, and this is in Matthew 26:31, this very night you will all fall away on account of me. And he says, I will strike like a shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I've risen, I'll go ahead of you into Galilee. And it's Peter there at verse 33 that says, even if all fall away on account of you, I never will. If you were watching yesterday, my friend Rich and I talked about that Peter has so many of these up and down moments, that it was not long before this at Caesarea Philippi where Peter had made this just bold declaration that you are Christ, you're the Son of the living God, you're the Messiah. Um, and Jesus is like, good job. Now I'm going to go suffer and die. And Peter's like, no, you're not. He rebukes Jesus. Jesus says, get behind me, Satan. So again, Peter had gone from, we'll go this way, a high down to a low. And here he is, they're in this high moment in the upper room, um, you know, celebrating the Passover. They're expecting the kingdom, as you would have found out by watching yesterday. They're expecting the kingdom to be heralded in, and in Jesus to ultimately kind of be that political king that they were looking for, and Messiah. And now things are starting to seemingly go south. Jesus is like, listen, I'm going to get betrayed into the hands of the bad guys. And Peter's like, no, you're not. You're um and he's like, and you guys are going to fall away. He says, no, I will not fall away. These other 11, they will, not me. Yeah, all right. So there, Jesus, and that's when Jesus said, this very night, before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. In verse 35, Matthew 26, Peter declared, even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you. And all the other disciples said the same. And so that sets the scene. After that, they headed out to Gethsemane. We know about the disciples falling asleep while Jesus prayed. And then he gets arrested. And so you pick up at verse 47. While he was still speaking, Judas arrived. With him was a large crowd armed with swords and clubs, sent from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with them. The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him. Going at once to Jesus, Judas said, greetings, Rabbi, and kissed him. Jesus replies, do what you came for, friend. Friend. He called him friend in that moment. You ever think Jesus was maybe a little sarcastic at that point? I don't know. Then the men stepped forward, seized Jesus, and arrested him. And with that, one of Jesus's companions reached for his sword, drew it out, and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. Now notice that Matthew, Mark, and Luke all describe the person that cut the man's ear off as just one of Jesus's companions. But it takes John here, and if I'm going to flip over to John chapter 18, where he says, then Simon Peter, who had a sword, and as we learned yesterday, that was, again, he was, well, go back and watch yesterday. It was great. You learn about Simon Peter's sword. Then Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant, cutting off his right ear. And I love the detail that John puts in here when he says the servant's name was Malchus. Nowhere else in Matthew, Mark, or Luke do we find out that this guy has a name, Malchus. But we're going to find out in a few minutes here that's not the that Malchus plays another role here in just a second. Okay, back into Matthew. So we know now that that's Simon Peter that was the one that had the sword. We wouldn't have known that just reading Matthew, Mark, or Luke's Gospels. And I every once in a while I take a moment to go back here and look at the comments as I'd looked away for a while. Good morning, everybody. Wayne, great to have you there. Looking forward to seeing you all at church. Looking forward to seeing you all at Good Friday tonight. We have a full house tonight. So we're going to be right up there to our 1/4, 25% capacity there tonight. Okay, so back to Jesus in Matthew 26, verse 52. He says, put the sword back in its place. For all who draw the sword will die by the sword. Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scripture be fulfilled that say it must happen this way? Again, Jesus gets the big picture. Jesus is saying, listen, I don't want to go where I'm going. I've already told my Father, just not long ago here in the garden. I don't want to do this, but not my will, but yours be done. Peter cuts this guy's ear, Malchus's ear off. Jesus heals the ear. And then Jesus looks at the crowd. He says, am I leading a rebellion that you've come out with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I sat in the temple courts teaching. You didn't arrest me. But this has taken place that the writings of the prophets might be fulfilled. And so here Jesus, again, the big picture. He gets the big picture. He knows what's going to happen, and he's willing to allow God to take him through this. Hey, looks like we have a guest coming in here into the shed this morning. Hello, Peter.
Gosh, my hair looks bad.
I don't think it looks that. What do you guys think about Peter's hair? What have you been up to?
Playing basketball.
Yeah. Got the cousin here.
Yep.
Yep. Should we go? Let's go other camera so we can do another. No, hey, don't you be moving my microphone.
Well, the thing's in front of me.
I know. I'm going to get another camera view so we can look. They can all see you right there. How's that?
Hi guys.
Yeah. Okay. So Peter, we're at the point in the middle of the night where Peter just cut off a guy named Malchus's ear.
Yep.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think about being named Peter and having, this guy Peter who like would do really good things, but also was kind of, sometimes
kind of stupid.
Okay, let's just
Simple.
Let's just spell it out that way, right? Do you mind being named after him?
Sometimes.
Oh, this is good. This is good. All right, let's keep on going here. Back to the normal camera here.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for joining us, Peter. It's good. I do not doubt there will be more that will show up in the next few minutes. So just enjoy the ride here today. Okay, so what we find out after this point that Peter had cut off Malchus's ear. Jesus heals the ear. And they take Jesus away to the let's get this right, because I believe they're going to go to the high priest and to his home. All right, so he goes to the Sanhedrin, and the high priest is there, and Peter kind of follows along at the distance. But again, I come back to John's gospel because I love the way John's gospel lays this out. So it says there that Simon Peter and another disciple were following Jesus. This is John 18:15. Because this disciple, now not Simon Peter, but the other disciple, was known to the high priest, he went with Jesus into the high priest's courtyard. So they're at the home of the high priest, okay? But Peter had to wait outside at the door. The other disciple, who was known to the high priest, came back, spoke to the servant girl on duty there, and brought Peter in. And so he knows the high priest, and and it's kind of like he goes there and goes, hey, no, he's with me, he's good, you can let him in. They let him in to the courtyard. So you have the servant girl who's on duty there, and she looks at him and at Peter, and she asks, you aren't one of the man's disciples too, are you? And so obviously they know that this other disciple is one of Jesus's disciples, and she's like, hey, are you one of them? And he replies, I'm not. Okay, there's number one, right? And it says he was cold. It was cold, and the servants and officials stood around a fire that they had made to keep warm. Peter was also standing with them, warming himself. And so you have this great picture of Peter out there in the courtyard. It's cold. He's now let the temptation has come in to say, no, I was not with him. That's not he's not my friend. I don't know what's going on there. We have the second denial on its way. So we have the high priest questioning Jesus. Again, we're in Mark 8 or John 18. And then at verse 25, meanwhile, Simon Peter was still standing there warming himself. So they asked, "You aren't one of the disciples too, are you?" And he denied it again, saying, "I'm not." Well, one of the high priest's servants, okay, this is again, this is why I love doing the John version of this. One of the high priest's servants, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off. So this is a relative of Malchus who got identified by John. Again, in the other gospels, we don't hear about this. One of the high priest's servants, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, challenged him, "Didn't I see you with him in the garden?" And again, Peter denied it. And at that moment, the rooster began to crow. So we all know this story, but I think it might be good to step backwards a little bit to Matthew's version in Matthew 26, where it says, let's go to Peter disowning Jesus in Matthew 26, because at verse 69, it says, "Now Peter was sitting out in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him. 'You were also with Jesus of Galilee.' But he denied it before them all. 'I don't know what you're talking about.' Then he went out into the gateway, where another servant girl saw him and said to the people there, 'This fellow was with Jesus of Nazareth.' He denied it again with an oath. 'I don't know the man. I swear, I don't know the man. I swear on somebody's grave, I don't know the man.' After a little while, those standing there with Peter went up to Peter and said, 'Surely you're one of them. Your accent gives you away.' And then he began to call down curses, and he swore to them, 'I don't know the man.'" And this is where the Matthew is very generous to Peter in this moment, but this is where all the bleeps start happening. Peter is, "I don't bleep, 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 know the man, bleep, bleep, bleep." That's what's going on right here. I think sometimes we think that, characters in the Bible aren't capable, some of our heroes in the Bible aren't capable of some of these things that we ourselves are very quite capable of. But indeed they are. Let's turn over to Mark for the next little section of this. All right, here comes guest number 2 into the shed. This is my son, Titus. Hey, Titus. How's it going out there? Not great. Okay?
No.
You don't want to see them?
Not good.
Okay. Do you want to just hang out?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're going to keep on going. Titus is right here. So here, notice in Mark, we're at Mark chapter 14, and we're at verse 72. And Peter had called down curses. He swore to them, "I don't know this man." It says, immediately the rooster crowed the second time. Then Peter remembered the word Jesus had spoken to him, "Before the rooster crows twice, you will disown me 3 times." And it says, and he broke down and wept. Okay, that's in Mark's account. He broke down and wept. In Luke's account, it says about this moment, says, and he went outside and wept bitterly. And in Matthew says the exact same thing. It says he went outside and wept bitterly. And here is this moment where Peter is at the lowest of lows. He's gone from that great high just a few hours before in the upper room, feeling part of the club, and hears Jesus speaking of the kingdom, till he goes to a moment where he, in essence, kind of rebukes Jesus, said, "No, it's not going to happen this way." Jesus says, "It does have to happen." He says, "No, I'm going to stick with you." And that promise that Peter had made to Jesus turned out to be a lie, and conviction has completely set in as he heard that rooster crow twice. and he knows um, that he did not keep his promise to Jesus to stick with him through thick and thin. We'd find out later that it was with the women, that it was the women who were following him that stuck with him through every moment of that night, staying in the distance there, but then also being there at the crucifixion, being there to anoint, um, um, to be at the grave, going back to the grave, and the ones that were faithfully there. But Peter hits the lowest of lows, and I think sometimes it's good for us to stop and remember that. I did a sermon several years ago, or not, about a year and a half ago at Sunrise, and we talked about this moment, and we actually had kind of left it hanging there. Because we wanted people to feel the weight of what Peter had done, and not resolve it, and not go back and tell the rest of the happy ending that would happen when he gets restored by Jesus. Um, but I think sometimes it's good to, especially on Good Friday, to just go into that day into this day with the heaviness that we are sinners, and that in a moment when Peter thought things were all going right, everything went terribly wrong, and he had it's really a pivotal moment. We see that he wept bitterly, and I think that's maybe the difference between he and Judas, because Judas ended up carrying that guilt all the way to the tree where he hanged himself because he couldn't get past it. Peter processed that guilt. He wept bitterly, but he stayed committed, and he didn't leave. And he didn't leave the group of disciples. He stayed with the disciples right up to that point where, when Jesus had been resurrected, he told them to go also tell Peter. So that's where we leave it today, with Peter in a tough place, weeping bitterly, and maybe that's a good spot for us to be in as we head into Good Friday. Just being in that spot of a heaviness, and in the understanding the severity of our sin, and so realizing when Jesus goes to the cross, um, that it's not just him being punished unjustly, but it's him being punished for our sin, those things that we did. There you go. Backshed Bible Study for Friday, Good Friday, 2021. Uh, Looking forward to being with you all tonight at our Good Friday service. Like I said, we're almost full capacity for that. Also looking forward to our 3 services on Sunday. We still have plenty of room in the 10 and 11 o'clock services. That 9 o'clock service is getting close to full. So we encourage you to sign up for one of those other ones, 10 or 11, if you haven't signed up to show up. Remember, if you're going to come for online and watch online, you don't need reservations. Just show up online. We'll be here, and we'll be live streaming tonight's Good Friday service, as well as all 3 services on Sunday morning. We're going to pray, and then we're going to close things out. I got a little announcement about what's coming up on Monday on the Backshed, and then we'll be on our way. Lord, thank you this morning for the fact that we got to be here together. Thanks for those watching, those that will watch. And I pray that we would feel the weight of Peter's sin on that night so many years ago, and the bitterness of it all, how he wept bitterly. But Lord, I just pray that we also would understand your redemption and what you do to restore us, as you are very well going to restore Peter. Thank you, Lord. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen. Looking forward to Backshed on Monday. You do not want to miss this one. It's going to, I recorded it a couple of weeks ago because my special guest was in Thailand. So going live would have been a bit difficult for that one. I think it would have been 4 a.m. for him. So, but I'm going to have Titus Dinkins. That's right. His name's Titus. And we didn't name Titus after him, but it was influenced by him because this guy is a great guy, doing some really cool work in Thailand. So to give you a little preview of Titus Dinkins, Titus was an Alaskan bush pilot. He grew up in Thailand, but his parents were from the U.S. They were missionaries there in Thailand, and then he has since moved back to Thailand after being an Alaskan bush pilot, and is working with Free Burma Rangers. And that's one of those things I would encourage you, if you're going to watch on Monday, Google it ahead of time, Free Burma Rangers, and get a little idea of some of the work that he is doing over in Thailand, and then with what they call FBR in what they are calling politically today, calling Myanmar, which is an absolute mess right now. And so that's going to be a very insightful interview. Like I said, a couple weeks ago, we recorded that one, and it was really good. So you're in for a treat with that one. That's coming up on Monday. Otherwise, we'll see you this weekend. Have a great one. Thanks for joining us on the Backshed today, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.